The laughter started as a single, sharp sound from the front row. Then it spread. It rippled through the entire auditorium, a wave of humiliation that crashed over me as I stood frozen on that stage. My hands, clutching my diploma case, turned numb. My throat closed. I could see their faces, teachers, classmates, even my own brother, all of them contorted in mockery, because my name had just been called for a degree they all considered a joke, a future they deemed worthless. That moment, under the blinding stage lights, was meant to be my pinnacle. Instead, it was my public execution. They laughed at my graduation. They wrote my obituary before my life had even begun. What they didn't know was that they were sowing the seeds for their own desperation. They were laughing at the very person who would one day hold the key to everything they needed. To understand the depth of that betrayal, you have to go back to where the trust was built, brick by fragile brick. My brother Alex was my hero, 7 years older, charismatic, successful by every conventional metric. He was the golden child, the finance guy in the sleek suits whose handshake seemed to promise the world. And me, I was the quiet one, the dreamer who spent more time in the garage, tinkering with broken motherboards and lines of code than at parties. While Alex networked, I built. While he talked about markets, I was creating them in my head. But he never dismissed me. Not back then. He'd ruffle my hair, call me his little genius, and tell me to hurry up and invent something to make him rich. I believed it was pride. I thought our bond was the unshakable kind. And then there was Sarah, my best friend since freshman year. We were two outsiders who found solace in each other's silence. We'd stay up all night in the library, not just studying, but planning, dreaming out loud. I shared everything with her. My fears of never being enough, my passion for sustainable technology, the blueprint, literally, of the project that would become my life's work. She was my confidant, my cheerleader. She'd look me in the eye and say, "The world isn't ready for how brilliant you are." I believed her. I felt seen. I felt armored by that friendship. Together, Alex and Sarah formed my entire ecosystem of trust. They were my foundation. I was building my future, and in my mind, I was building it for us. For our little tribe against the world. The cracks started so small they were almost invisible. A missed call from Alex when I got into the graduate program he said was a waste of time. A hesitant smile from Sarah when I explained my thesis project. A new type of energy-efficient processor that could revolutionize data centers. "It sounds niche," she'd say, her voice laced with a doubt I'd never heard before. I shrugged it off. Pressure, I thought. They just don't see the vision yet, but I would show them. I poured 4 years of my life into that project. Years of all-nighters, of failed prototypes, of ramen noodles and relentless focus. Alex would visit, look at my cluttered workspace and joke, "Still playing with toys?" His laughter was changing. It was no longer warm. It had an edge, a sharp, dismissive edge that cut deeper each time. The betrayal wasn't a single event. It was a slow, chilling realization. 6 months before graduation, I needed funding, a critical component for the final prototype. I went to Alex, my proposal meticulous, my projections conservative. He listened, leaned back in his leather chair and said, "Little brother, this is a fantasy. A very expensive fantasy. No one will ever back this. You need to get a real job. Come work for me. I'll find you a desk in the mailroom." The words weren't just a no. They were an annihilation. He didn't just reject my idea. He rejected my entire being, my intelligence, my years of sacrifice. The hero I looked up to saw me as a delusional child. I left his office, the printed proposal feeling like lead in my hands. But the true devastation came from Sarah. A week later, I was buzzing. I'd found another way, a small university grant. I ran to her apartment to tell her. I let myself in with the key she'd given me, calling her name. I found her in the living room with Alex and 2 of his colleagues. They had a projector set up. On the screen was a simplified, slickly packaged version of my processor concept, my slides, my data, my unique solutions, repackaged with buzzwords. "We're calling it the Apex Core," Alex was saying, pointing at the screen with a laser pointer. "It's the future." Sarah saw me first. Her face went white. Alex turned, and for a fraction of a second I saw surprise. Then it melted into a cold, calculated calm. "Oh, hey, we were just brainstorming. You inspired us, kid." Sarah couldn't even look at me. The silence in that room was louder than any laughter. My best friend and my brother. They hadn't just doubted me. They'd stolen from me. They'd carved out my soul and were trying to sell it. Graduation day was supposed to be my fresh start. I had, against all odds, secured the grant. I built a prototype in secret, working out of a borrowed lab. My thesis advisor, the only one who believed, submitted my work. It won a quiet but prestigious award. My name was called for a special distinction. That's what triggered the laughter. Because my degree was in Integrated Systems Innovation. A mouthful. A mystery. To them, it was nonsense. Alex was in the audience, smirking. Sarah sat beside him, her eyes on the floor. The laughter felt physical. It was 1,000 tiny needles piercing my skin. I took my diploma, walked off the stage, and left the ceremony. I didn't go to the after-parties. I didn't respond to the fake, pitying messages. I went home, packed a single bag, and drove. I drove until the city lights were a distant blow, and then I let the silence swallow me whole. For months I lived in that silence. It was my cocoon and my prison. I rented a room in a town no one had heard of. I worked a simple, mindless tech repair job. I spoke only when necessary. The pain wasn't a sharp sting anymore. It was a heavy, constant ache, a cold stone in my chest. I questioned everything, my judgment, my worth. Had I been a fool? Was my dream really just a childish fantasy? The worst part was the haunting echo of their laughter. It played in my head on a loop, a soundtrack to my failure. I thought about confronting them. I thought about sending angry emails, legal threats, but action felt impossible. I was paralyzed by the sheer magnitude of the betrayal. So I did nothing. I just existed. In the quiet, letting the wound fester. But in that silence a strange thing happened. The noise of their opinions faded. The need for their approval evaporated. All that was left was the work, the pure, unadulterated love for the problem I was trying to solve. I started tinkering again. Not for a degree, not for recognition, not for them. For me, in the cramped corner of that rented room, with second-hand parts, I began to rebuild. But this time it was different. This time, I wasn't building to prove them wrong. I was building because it was the only thing that made sense to me. The anger cooled into a solid, durable fuel. The heartbreak tempered my resolve like steel. I wasn't their little brother or their naive friend anymore. I was a man who had been burned to the ground, and from the ashes I was slowly, quietly rebuilding myself. Brick by brick. Line of code by line of code. It took 2 years of obsessive, silent work. I perfected the processor, made it smaller, more efficient, more elegant than my original design. The theft had forced me to think differently, to innovate around my own ideas. I filed patents myself, with a lawyer who saw the fire in my eyes and worked for a promise of future payment. I called it the kernel, a core, a foundation, something essential. I launched it, not with a flashy party, but with a single, detailed technical paper published in the right journal. And the world noticed. Not the world of party-goers and finance bros, the real world, the engineers, the climate tech startups, the giants who are drowning in their own energy costs. My quiet niche laughter degree suddenly became the key to a multi-billion-dollar problem. Offers began to flood in. Not just job offers, acquisition offers, partnership pleas. I was no longer a joke. I was a pioneer. And I said nothing. I let my work speak in a voice far louder than my own. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I almost didn't answer. The number was from my hometown. A voice I hadn't heard in years, trembling, desperate. It was Sarah. "We need to talk," she said, the words thick with tears. "It's Alex. It's bad." I listened, my face expressionless. The story tumbled out. Their apex core, built on my stolen concepts, had a fundamental flaw, a critical instability they couldn't fix. They'd rushed it to market, overpromised to major investors, and now it was failing. Catastrophically, a flagship client, a massive data firm, was about to sue them into oblivion for breach of contract and damages. Alex's company, his reputation, his entire Golden Boy legacy was 48 hours away from a very public, very humiliating collapse. And in their panic, they had discovered through industry whispers that the only person who understood the core architecture well enough to possibly fix it was me, the author of the original design they'd mutilated, the fool they'd laughed off the stage. I agreed to meet in a sterile conference room at their offices. The air was thick with fear. Alex looked aged, hollow. The slick confidence was gone, replaced by a frantic, jishery energy. Sarah looked broken. They had slides, printouts, please prepared. "We can offer you a consultancy fee," Alex started, his voice unsteady. "A senior role. Name your price." I let them talk. I let them exhaust their desperation. I looked at the schematics of their failed project, seeing my own work twisted and corrupted by shortcuts and greed. Finally, I spoke. My voice was calm. The same calm I'd found in my silence. "There is no fix for this," I said, gesturing to their design. "The architecture is fundamentally unsound. You tried to build a skyscraper on a foundation of sand." Alex's face crumpled. "Then we're finished," you whispered. I paused, leaned forward. "Your project is finished, but your client's problem still needs solving." I slid a single sheet of paper across the table. It was a term sheet. Not for a consultancy, for a licensing agreement. For them to use my technology, the kernel, to fulfill their obligation. The fee was astronomical. It would save their company, but cost them their pride, their profits, and their illusion of control. They would survive, but they would be forever in my debt, using my work under my terms, the ultimate silent revenge, making them dependent on the very dream they tried to destroy. They signed. They had no choice. The news cycle called it a brilliant last-minute partnership and a Hail Mary save. Alex was praised for his humility in seeking out innovative solutions. No one knew the truth, and I let them have that narrative. I didn't need the public victory. I had already won, watching them accept my terms, watching the relief and the shame war on their faces, was a closure no audience's applause could ever provide. The laughter from graduation day finally faded, replaced by the profound, quiet sound of their concession. So, what did I learn in the end? Revenge is not about spectacle. It's not about screaming, "I told you so." True revenge is the relentless, quiet pursuit of your own worth. Long after the world has told you you have none, it's letting your success become the answer to every insult, without you ever having to utter a word. They laughed at my graduation because they couldn't see the future I was building. They needed me later because that future arrived and they were trapped in the past. The moral isn't that hard work pays off. It's that betrayal, that deep, personal heartbreak. It can become your greatest fuel, but only if you let it transform you, not consume you. Let the laughter settle. Let the silence deepen. And in that quiet space, build something so unshakably real that when the storm finally hits those who doubted you, you are no longer just a survivor. You are the architect of the very ground they begged to stand on. Your value is not defined by their recognition. It is defined by your resilience, and sometimes the sweetest justice is not in their downfall but in your unwavering silent rise.